Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our program. Welcome to our sales conversation, another journey into urgency-based selling, bold vision, bold behavior. Today's topic is the harder to close prospect. Now, it's kind of obvious. We typically close the easiest prospects first, and our pipeline can become congested with the difficult to close prospects. They may seem impossible. And we're going to talk about what we can do to not only make them possible, but probable. Now, one challenge we face as we address a pipeline with difficult to close opportunity is self-limiting assumptions, and in particular, treating all prospects the same. The idea of the self-limiting assumption is really encapsulated well in this picture. What you see here is Roger Bannister being the first person in the West recorded to run the 4-minute mile. And until he did it, everybody thought it was impossible. You can't run a 4-minute mile. That's a self-limiting assumption. And the year after he ran the 4-minute mile, somebody beat his time because he believed it was possible, just by a fraction of a second. So it's obvious that not all prospects are the same. But the question we're exploring here is, do we treat different prospects differently? Easier to close, hard to close. Let's look at an example. Let's say we have two prospects in the pipeline. At the beginning, they look the same. They both show enthusiasm for our offer. We ask good questions. They validate they have budget, decision-making authority. There's a sense of urgency, a timing. They need to do this soon. We submit fantastic proposals to each of them. One of them closes and one of them goes radio silent on us. We can't get him back on the phone after we submit the proposal. What happened? What went wrong? So there's a huge difference between a totally cold opportunity and one, for instance, where there's recurring revenue, like we're the incumbent. So yes, we bid on an opportunity, but it's very likely we're going to get it based on history. And the other case where it's different is you've done the standard sales call and you've made the 3 sales. More on that as we go forward. And by the way, there's going to be a question period available at the end, so you could use your control box if you want to ask questions at the end. So there's a huge difference in access. It's obvious after you quote. You know, with the easy to close, they want to talk to you. And with the hard to close, it's like they vanish after we quote. So a key thought question here is, are we tailoring our selling to the easiest to close prospect? I mean, for instance, I've been doing this process of sales consulting and sales training with over 170 companies in the last 30 years. And what I find is very often salespeople spend 80 to 90% of their time calling on existing customers. And very often they could develop a habit of mind. Here's how you present to your existing customer. And then they take that mindset to the new customer, the harder to close customer, and it's a train wreck. Let's look at a case that should have been easy and then didn't go so well. One of my prospects from some years ago. Bob's the CEO of an insurance company. He attended a public seminar I gave. He emailed me after the seminar and said he wanted to meet. So I sent him a short survey with an email. Now, in the survey, I said, hey, you might want to just think about these questions. How do you encourage prospects to enter a serious conversation? How do you create a sense of urgency for the prospects to act now? You, of course, would have your own, diagnostic questions that are appropriate to your business. And I sent a cover email. How about we meet on on April 28th, and I'd like some background information, so could you complete this short audit and just return it to me? So Bob agrees to the meeting. This is all by email. But then as he's filling out the survey, he changes his mind. And he writes me this email. He says, going through your questionnaire, I decided we have more of a marketing issue than a sales issue. I think we should cancel the meeting for the 28th. But by the way, thanks for putting on an entertaining and interesting presentation. Oh my gosh, this didn't go so well. So I had to ask myself afterwards, did I make the 3 sales? Did you make your 3 sales? So the most important sale is the salesperson sale, convincing the prospect that you're authentic and you're worthy of being like a consultant. And it's only after we make the first sale that we can make the offer sale and the company sale. Now, in my experience, the one sale we tend to miss so much of the time is making the company sale, the third sale, the risk mitigation sale. Now, you might think, well, when I call on my existing customers, I don't have to do risk mitigation. And that's absolutely true. And that's kind of like the source of the problem here, which is it's something that could be desperately needed with a new prospect, but not so much, with the customer you've been calling on for a long time. Now, if you're going to join this kind of enterprise with an open mind, a good mindset is what Jim Collins calls in Good to Great level 5 leadership, which means that you're competent, you're strong, and you're humble. And you might say, well, isn't it one or the other? You're highly strong, competent, dominant, or humble, one or the other. And Collins calls that a tyranny of the or. And to be a level 5 leader, he offers this advice: use the window and the mirror properly. So when things go well, look outside the window and say, wow, great team, give credit to the team, they helped us close the sale. But when things don't go well, hold the mirror up to your face and say, what could I have done differently? Take ownership. Now, in a dysfunctional company with dysfunctional leadership, and a salesperson who's going to have trouble with that harder close opportunity, they reverse the use. So when things go well, you hold the mirror up to your face and say, wow, I did a great job. And when things don't go well, you look outside the window and say, who can I blame? So that's consistent with learned helplessness, the opposite of using the mirror properly. Now, to deal with this harder to close scenario, my standard is I try to test 2 new ideas a week, because what we need to do, and this is like derivative of level 5 leadership, is we need to earn the right to each stage of the selling process. So if the prospect's not responding, we didn't earn the right, and it's very probably because we didn't do the risk mitigation sale. So how do we, practically do the 3 proofs? We all have some kind of a standard sales call. This is our standard sales call. 1 to 7 warms up the serious conversation. 8 to 12 is our fact finding. 13 to 18 is how we manage the opportunity. Let's look at some of the things we do that you may feel like you don't need to do when you're calling on an existing customer. You do your research, step 1. You send a pre-call confirmation with an agenda, step 2, to show you're serious. Bonding you probably do, but there's social and business bonding. Social bonding, hey, what about them Yankees? Business bonding, core value alignment. You show proper humility. My objective is to earn the right to your business. My objective, I say this all the time, is if we have a call that you're glad you took the call, that you had takeaways. What's the freebie? What's the free gift? The wisdom that you bring to each meeting. In fact, that's great preparation. What's your wisdom, right? And then what's your hard-hitting messaging? What's the prospect's objective? These are some of the qualities you build into your sales presentation to turn cold to serious to warm. Now, in each call, there's an objective, either to close or get a PIK. The preferred objective of any call is you close, you get an order, a purchase order. But many of us sell and it could take months or even years to close. So then we're looking for a PIK, a payment in kind. Now, a payment in kind is what the prospect does to show commitment to the process. Could be fills out a credit application, checks a reference. If you're not dealing with the CEO, they introduce you to the CEO. These all vary by your business. I'm sure you know what some of these indicators are in your case. The key in every sales call is to kind of conceptualize in advance, what's the PIK I want? Because that's how you know you have a serious opportunity. Now, when you do a pipeline analysis, do you qualify your pipeline by PIKs? Do you say, okay, here's a great opportunity, and I know it's great because of this reason, because, they introduced me to the CEO. Quick case history. The salesperson had $7 million in the pipeline. He needed $1 million in sales to have a great year, and he was failing. Well, we sat down and we did a pipeline analysis, and this is what we found. When you went by PIK, he was lucky to have $700,000. Most of it was just blind bids. And think about this. If there's an incumbent, and they bid, and we bid, and they don't get to know us, and we don't make the third sale, how the heck could they ever buy from us? It's too risky. So here's an approach, and it's a takeaway for you if you're not doing it, or to remind you, how to harvest PIKs with the fast track approach when you earn the right, the 3-step process. So when you get to the end of your sales call, you ask for takeaways. What did you take away from this call? And they say, you have prompt delivery, let's say. So you say, I'm glad to hear you're interested in this. Is this something you want to fast track or back burner? And what we're looking for, of course, is we're looking for a commitment to fast track. And ideally, if they say fast track, then we say we should do this PIK. We should meet again next week. We should get your chief of operations involved. Because at this point, they've committed to the fast track. And ideally, we bring them to this state of mind before we even give a proposal. Certainly, we really need to make the third sale, the risk mitigation sale. Well, you might say, well, what if they don't want to fast track it? Well, then we know we have selling to do. We haven't earned the right to the fast track. See, when with these harder to close prospects, we're kind of like on the outside looking in, and we have to take the prospect on a journey on the change curve. The material in this slide comes from a book called On Death and Dying, which acknowledges that all change involves a certain amount of grieving. We're giving things up. So when we talk to the prospect, if we start looking for a commitment, they start pushing us away and getting resistance. See, if all we have is a friendly conversation, we never ask for a commitment, no problem. But the resistance, the closed mindset comes up if we're looking for a commitment and we haven't made the third sale. Of course, the prospect doesn't know what they don't know. So if we teach them what they don't know, hopefully we bring them to the learning mindset, exploration, and now because we have a great offer, we could bring them to hope and commitment. So the real action in selling, when we're talking about the harder to close prospect, is typically with the third sale, not always, but typically the risk mitigation sale, and bringing them from resistance, closed mindset to exploration and learning mindset. Now there's a paradox here, the paradox of change. I've run into this many times over the years. Salespeople understand that the prospect has to change or we can't succeed. And yet there are many salespeople who won't change. They say, hey, it's not my problem. It's that problem over there, right? It's that problem over there. It's the, our price is not right, or our dating terms are not right. They don't take responsibility. They don't take responsibility. So very often, just as a review, the problem is we're not making the third sale, the company sale, the risk mitigation sale. Now, one way to prove is with testimonial letters. Here's a testimonial letter I got some years ago from Disney. Now, there are folks who say, who don't get testimonials. They say, well, everybody gets 3 testimonials. Nobody believes in them because just like you pay your bills to 3 people. So the testimonials sometimes are convincing in and of themselves, but sometimes, you got to do your 4-step process for proving. Here's one for a roofing manufacturer. So our processes include our underlying core processes, quality control, which lead to strong statistics, 98% satisfaction for customers, which means that our warranty is believable. So the first 2 points here, the processes and the statistics, are the science of the business. And then the guarantee or promise is validated anecdotally by customer testimonials. So this is a stronger way to do the type 3 sale. Now, another way to understand this is to think about the problem of risk aversion. Kahneman discusses this in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, and helps us understand why a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Join me in your mind in doing this experiment here in risk aversion. What would you rather have? $50,000 sure thing wired to your account, or a coin toss? Heads, you get 100,000, tails, you get 0. Heads, you get 100,000, tails, you get 0. If you're like most people, you want the sure thing. That's step 1. Then we go to step 2. What about $40,000 sure thing versus the coin toss, where heads, you get 100,000, tails, you get sure thing? What about 30,000? Kahneman found over the years that usually it takes a 2-to-1 ratio before people will go for the coin toss, given their starting position in terms of how much money they have. Let's apply this to the buyer, who's the harder to close buyer. Are they going to see you more like the sure thing or the coin toss? The sure thing or the coin toss? Well, typically they see us more like the coin toss, and that's why they stick with the incumbent if you don't make the 3rd sale. So with risk aversion in mind and the objective of moving towards the sure thing, let's return to my opening case. So Bob attended a public seminar, right? And then he called me, said he wanted to meet. So I sent him the email with the survey, right? How do you get into a serious conversation? How do you create a sense of urgency? And I sent out the email saying, hey, could you answer the questions? And when filling out the questions, he decided to cancel, right? Well, that was a disaster. My PIK request backfired, right? So I move on because you can't sell everyone, right? And there's lots of opportunity because of the economy. And after all, he liked my seminar, so don't worry about this one, do I? Wait a minute. Consider the context. He came to a seminar. That's an important PIK. And he contacted me, so he was serious. So I need some innovativeness here. Little moxie. So here's the email I sent out. Hey, Bob, glad it clarified your thinking. You didn't waste my time. I was glad to get to know you. You might have some clients who should evaluate their selling process at the right time. You might just recommend me. I will offer you this comment. When I'm invited to do a phase 1 study, I develop some core marketing messaging. So there's an integrated sales marketing program based on urgency. See, the key is to imbue everything you do with urgency. Traditionally, very often, not always, marketing materials are milquetoast. They're too weak to matter. Why don't you think this over after looking at the attached case histories, and I sent them case histories and testimonials to make the 3rd sale. Maybe it would still be a good idea to meet. Bob responds, appreciate your note. I'm not sure how we can accomplish this. We're an insurance wholesaler. Our challenge is finding, educating, and getting new high-level advisors. So it's a consultative sell. We don't ask them to make a buying decision. Take a look at our website. If you still think a meeting makes sense, The date and time works, let me know. I say, okay, hey, great business. I'd like to explore a fit. I revised the survey, see if it makes more sense. Let's meet. And we did. Now, the whole story would take me 15 minutes to tell. If you want to hear it, write to me. We'll set up a meeting. I'll give you the whole story. But the bottom line here is I had to make the third sale to move things forward, to move it from hard to close to easy to close. I did close it, and there was about $60,000 of fees over about a half a year. Let's say the horse has already left the barn. You made your proposal, they've gone radio silent for you. I want to give you a few things you could try if you haven't to get them back from radio silence. The handwritten note, particularly in a 3-day FedEx, is a big success. And then send wisdom. Step 5 of the standard sales call is, what is your wisdom? Send that in the handwritten note. Storm the Bastille, show up. Recruit the receptionist is a great tactic. We talked about core value alignment. You could do that with your handwritten note, and use testimonials. Use testimonials. And by the way, much of this could go with your handwritten note. And this is geared to making the third sale. Don't overload them. A good technique, if the prospect's worth it, is a handwritten note in a 3-day FedEx every week for 8 weeks. But I don't need to do these things with my key accounts, you say. Well, you don't, because they're easy to close. And we're talking here about the hard to close. Let me know if you want this list. Be one of the things I'll give away. And perhaps most important, don't forget mindset. Establish the habit of selling the most challenging by using your techniques all the time. We need to put ourselves in harm's way. At least 20% of our pipeline and new sales are from new prospects. I've been lucky. I've been selling for 40 years, and I would say on average, 50% of my sales always come from new prospects. Take ownership. Use the mirror. So take ownership and say, what else could I have done? And finally, weekly team meetings. Meet as a team and talk about what was the bravest action you took. What did we cover today? Mindset is key to closing the harder to close prospect. We need to beware tailoring our selling to the easiest to close opportunity. It's a self-limiting assumption. Earn the right to PIKs. Go for PIKs. Use PIKs to qualify your pipeline. PIKs are intermediate proof you're making the third sale, the risk mitigation sale. Update and use your proving materials. Well, we know Rome wasn't built in a day. Think about your takeaways, if any. We're going to have questions in a minute if you have any. If you want any of those 6 techniques, if you want to go over the whole case, reach out to me. First, an announcement. Please join us on January 11th for our next webinar, Balancing Sales Urgency, which means selling today, with planning and thoughtfulness in your sales process. So now we have some time for questions. So if you could use your box there to just send me an email, to send me a question. Let's see, we have a question here coming in. Is it worth chasing after cold opportunity when you have warm leads, strong customers, and we're hitting our numbers? I mean, my feeling is that it's a good thing to stay stay tuned up, because you never know when the next black swan event is going to occur, like COVID-19, or in 2007, the CMO, the collateralized mortgage obligation meltdown. So I would say it's always a good time to work on the harder to close and to target 20% or more of your pipeline coming from new customers. Here's a question. Isn't it relationships that matter? Why bother with this cold prospecting? All that really matters in selling is relationship. First of all, I would say I didn't intend that it be cold prospecting. How are they getting warm introductions from your big fans and following them up? So I think it makes sense to prospect and it makes sense to develop warm prospects. If it doesn't take much time, why not use this approach where you get to know somebody, you shoot out a quote, and if they don't like it, if they stay with the incumbent, you move on to the next one. Well, I see this as burning leads, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to make the third sale. Think about the 4-step process I showed you. I mean, in the first go round, it takes a minute to show it. What if you get to the end of a meeting and the prospect says they don't have any takeaways or they don't want to share them with you? Well, my view is either there was no fit, they're giving you, an impossible time, they're not really a prospect, or you didn't earn the right. You got to look in the mirror and say, did I earn the right? What if you don't have these PIKs? Does it mean your pipeline isn't valuable? In other words, what if you presented without PIKs? And now you're looking at your pipeline. Does it mean there's nothing good in there because you can't identify PIKs? Well, no, not necessarily. First of all, if you're dealing with existing customers, you have a course of dealing, you know how things are. But, and so it's predictable. And if it's new, it may be a great prospect, and it may be the case you're going to close it, but it's not as predictable as with PIKs. I'll take one more question. I can usually judge where I stand by tone of voice or body language. Who needs these PIKs? Well, if it works, I would go with it, but the problem is that a sophisticated buyer can con you. I have a fun video on that. Write to me if you're interested. I call it the parole officer scan. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. Hope you could join us next month for our next webinar. And if you have any questions, please do reach out to me. That's it, folks. Good selling. Merry Christmas. Have a happy New Year, and look forward to speaking to you and seeing you next month, next year. Bye now.